Beloved, welcome back to the shop. I am convinced that for the single man that's getting himself ready to enter into the great struggle, one of the best things you can do is invest in an off-road motorcycle, something that's enduro-road, something that's going to have the ability to go off-road and on-road. First off, they're untraceable. They don't have modern electronics on them. They're very easy to work on. They get incredible mileage, and it's something that you can master with just watching some YouTube videos. Today we're going to be talking about, or actually we're going to be doing new bearings and new seals in a rear wheel here. Now this is going to be for a KTM Husky, but it's going to apply to pretty much anything you had. The fundamentals are the same. So let's jump into it and get started. This is a 19-inch rear wheel off my TE300. It's probably got about 3 or 4 seasons on it. When I reach inside here, I can feel that the bearings are, well, they're pretty well shot. We will start by popping the seal out. The seal, this is the one on the other side, it's just a rubber seal that's pressed in that has a tight fit with the axle and keeps dirt and water and such from getting into the bearing. And those usually just pop out. The bearing is going to be held in by a circlip. Now you've seen these before. They're little clips that go on the inside and they retain different things. And this is the tool that you need. These come in large, medium, and small, and they work 2 ways. So when you're collapsing a circlip, if you look on the end, you'll see those 2 little pins. Those are hardened pins, and they're designed to fit inside these holes. Once you get those holes aligned, just squeeze it and get it out of the grooves, and it usually half the time it'll fly away someplace in your shop, never to be seen again. Okay, so I've got everything laid out here. The tools that we're going to need, we're going to be putting in titanium hardware. I went with a solid rear disc rotor. These are supposed to be better in mud, but I burnt it. I think I glazed it. It never has worked as good as the factory one, so we're going to get rid of that one. Make sure there's still enough life in the factory one. And then we've got the new bearings and seals. So brand new here, these are sealed bearings. You can tell they're sealed because you can't see the bearings inside. They've got the plastic covers on them. And 2 brand new seals. Here's the part that messes a bunch of guys up and they don't realize that there is a spacer in there. It's just a piece of pipe that just kind of floats around in there. And the purpose is so that you don't overdrive, it maintains the spacing on the bearings so you don't overdrive them into the hub. So to get those bearings out, you need to get your punch on the edge. So you got to actually move that around in there. You can see how I've got that offset. Once you get that thing offset, then you can get your punch on the edge of that bearing race. And I'll tell you the truth, beloved, as a young man, if you retain but just a fraction of these practical skills, this is going to give you God-tier power in the future. You will run through your peers. You'll stand out, is what I'm saying, because they don't have these things. And if you can't fix a wheel or repair a flat tire or replace a basic bearing, well, you're going to be the part of the 90% that doesn't survive. Let's check out our old bearings and seals. Seals look pretty good. They're a little bit dry. These wheels are 4 or 5 years old. The bearings, this one's really stiff. Even a little bit crunchy inside. This one actually is perfectly fine. It was just the one bad bearing, but you always replace both. There's that spacer, so those sit in there like that. The spacer just prevents it from overdriving your bearings, and then of course your seals go in, and that seals that axle that goes in there and keeps the dirt out of your bearing. Before we put those bearings back in, we'll make sure we clean that out really good. Clean as you go, just like a pro. Don't want any goobers or anything in there. Here's a pro tip when it comes to bearings. Bearings are almost always going to have a part number or a model number on them. Not on both sides, always. This one happens to have it on both sides, but always put the marker to the outside. That way anyone who's working on it, or if you're working on it, you can just look at it at a glance and you can get the part number without having to have that buried on the back side. So that's an important, nice style to do that. I'm going to be using this bearing press tool that I got from Tokyo Off-Road, and he's made this for KTM's where one side fits the rear bearing and then a larger mandrel for the front bearing. And we're going to press the disc side in first. So let's set this up. This will be the first time I've used this bearing puller. I've always in the past just hammered them in with a socket to, well, varying levels of success, I guess. We're going to need a 19mm socket. This bearing press holds everything in alignment, and it should, look how easy that goes in there. It should be pressing that nice and straight. It can get cockeyed in there, especially if you're pounding on it with a socket, and you can ruin your hub. So yeah, that's going in there nice. So we'll just put this down here till it seats, not too hard. And if we got that seated properly, that circlip should fit right back in its groove. Here you can see the holes and how that compresses. Make sure that's snapped in and in the groove. Many catastrophes have happened because of these circlips not being seated properly. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Letters or part number up if that's relevant. Not on this one. With both bearings pressed in, we are ready to do our seals, and I don't know why we couldn't use this press for those as well. In the past I've tapped those in, but since we're already set up, just gonna make sure that we don't damage it. Now, you don't have to tighten these very much. You can easily deform them, so when you feel that resistance. And then finally, we'll install our wheel spacers. Now, KTM's used the same type of wheel for a long time, and they only alter these spacers. They want to change an axle or something, so that's really nice. So you get a wide range of fitment. These spacers ride on the inside race of the bearing, and then they outward water and dust seal against the outside. So these just hammer in. Excellent. Fun fact, you can test by the thickness whether your brake rotors are worn out. Now, it should be stamped on the brake rotor itself. This one says 3.5 millimeters. So if you take your calipers and you can check the thickness, you can see that we're well within there, 415. This is essentially a brand new part, but as you wear, you'll develop a lip on here where the brake rotors run, and these can get so thin that they're just no longer effective. This thing's been beating around in a toolbox, so we'll take some Scotch-Brite, clean it up a little bit. We are ready to install our brake rotor. Now, these guys take a lot of abuse, so we're gonna be, I always use Loctite. I think it calls for it in the book 243. And I've got these Super Skookum titanium nuts, or bolts. We are ready for our rear sprocket. Now, sprockets are going to come they're going to come in a couple of different materials, aluminum or steel. The aluminum is appealing because it's very lightweight, and it's nice to have lightweight when you're hanging off the suspension. It's like a sprung weight or unsprung weight. Anything that's moving up and down, like your shock, wheels, brakes, all that weight has to stop and start, stop and start. So any weight that you can get out of that makes your suspension work all that much better. So it's always about compromise, right? So the aluminum sprockets are nice for weight, but they don't hold up very good. You've got a steel chain and they wear out pretty quickly. I'm in it for the long term, so a good all-arounder or a good kind of workaround is the dirt tricks. These will last. You can almost take them from bike to bike. They're so well made, they last forever. They're steel, but they're skeletonized, so they're very, very light and they're very, very strong. I think they're probably the best sprocket you can get. Now, I run 2 different gear ratios, one for my road wheels and one for off-road, like hard enduro, which is more geared to what the bike came with. I think the bike came with a 1350. I run a 1252 and a 1448 for road, which is what we're going to put on right now. Now, the front sprocket, when you change that really makes a big difference in the gear ratio. Each tooth for the front, I think, is equivalent to 2, I think it's 3 in the back. So to go, this is the 12 here, which I'll run for hard enduro, and then you can see the 14 is the biggest I can get. The cool thing about these 2 ratios is the 1252 gives me that really, really low end, like you're going to want for hard enduro, really difficult technical things. But when you want to get the bike where you can push it up to 70, 75 and cruise with it, like for supermoto or more fire roads riding, then that 1448 combination is going to be nice. Now those 2 combinations complement each other very well because you don't have to replace the chain. There's enough adjustment in the bike where you can use one chain for both ratios. So if you're swapping gears and tires, it's just one less thing you don't have to fool with. For the sprocket, I've also got these titanium bolts, which look really nice. They have a nice finish on them. Nice detail, but also very light, so functional and cool. Here's another pro tip. If you're reusing bolts that have had Loctite on them, Loctite just turns into like a blue plastic or red, and you need to kind of remove that. Usually it comes off in chunks. All right, gentlemen, we can finish up by balancing. You can balance your own motorcycle tires. Actually, some racers at the highest level prefer to do it themselves this way, even over machines. Just clamp any old sort of rod, a bolt, anything into your vise. Make sure it's horizontal. And it's all you need. Now these are wheel weights. They're these little brass weights that you can put on to offset the bead lock and whatever you have in there for a tire. And balancing these, especially speed on the road, is essential. It's a huge, makes your ride a whole lot more enjoyable. You can get these wheel weights in brass or aluminum. You can see they just take they got a grub screw on there. You can stack them up whatever you need. They come in a set. So I put the big ones on the front. That's primarily where you want to balance. And then you can do the rear too if you want to. When it's not balanced, if you let go of it at any place, it will slowly rotate down to the heaviest point on the bottom. And you just start adding these wheel weights until wherever you put it, it holds. This is already balanced. A quick update where we're at in the 300 build. I repacked all the bearings in the suspension, all down in here in the linkage. I replaced those a few years ago and I grease them every year, so they last a long time if you do that. I got the exhaust, everything on, and cleaned up new O-rings. We got the new muffler. I got the carburetor rebuilt, resealed, and new silicone hoses. Got that all installed. We've got the new gear, clutch assembly on, cooling system, and I just finished up with all of the wiring harness. So very simple wiring harness. with the clutch lever and just going through and just double checking everything and dealing with any corrosion. And wiring harness is pristine. And even the factory mount up here fit. Didn't think it was going to on the new clamps, but this is all, we're just waiting on the suspension, the forks, the shock, and the mount for the handlebars, and all that stuff should be here in a week or so. So I'm kind of running out of work until then. It's about all that I can do. So that is it. Thank you for watching. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't already, take a moment. You can click that thumbs up. It means a lot to us. And keep us in your prayers. We pray for you constantly. May God bless you and your families, and we'll see you all on the next video.